Hey everyone, final video of this sequence. We'll try to wrap it up in record time. So again, we were talking about the shape of the tree, well, the tree-like shape of the cloud of this volcanic eruption. So we were having this tree was rising, whose likeness and shape no other tree rather than the pine might express. So it looks like one of these Mediterranean pines, not our own. And we get this kind of description now coming up ahead. When I drew these, I almost got ahead of myself. For the longest, and this is probably going to be ablative, maybe dative, but again, this is superlative form of longus, longissimo. Just as, that's going to be our velut. And then trunco, well, we know what to do with that, trunk. For with a long trunk, just as. Elata, so you look this up and you see latus, this is, proudly tall, stretching up. So that, that's a word that we might easily use to describe a tree. In this case, what is elata? Well, we had arbor right there, which was feminine, but we're more properly talking about the nubes. Sorry, that's not just N-U-B-E-S. Nubis, feminine. That's the word for the cloud that we saw above. So the cloud stood up with the longest trunk in altum. So again, this is going to be in plus accusative. That doesn't mean in, but rather into. So into altum, the height, the heavens. We might make it plural. So to recap, for just as with the longest trunk, it stood up. We might say elata est, into the heights. Quibusdam ramis, with certain branches. So again, the tree metaphor is apt. We've got branches in the midst of all of this. Diffundebatur, it was diffusing. So fundo, which is the root of this, is to pour out. And note also with this branches, this is where we get ramifications from in English. So diff, kind of out and about, fundebatur, pouring out in all directions, certain branches. Candida, so this is again referring back to the elata, which is referring back to the nubes. So we have this tree that's standing tall, sometimes interdum, candida, white, interdum, sometimes sordida, kind of black, etmaculosa, and spotted. Prout, or prut, we don't see this actually too often. This is a kind of rare Latin adverb, but this is just as. Again, we could have done this with ut, but we have prout. So this is, you see where this comes from now, right? It's not, that almost looks like a German word otherwise, but prout, just as on behalf of, something like that. So prout, terram cenerem ve sustulerat. So you'd be tempted to take this as a form of suffero, ferre tuli latus, and we've had that. But in this case, it's actually coming from tollere, and then which ends up jumping its kind of third principal part, adding this sus. It's also there in the fourth. But this is a third principal part, and then we have this erat ending, which is clearly, unlike erit, which had two options earlier where it could be future perfect or perfect subjunctive. Here we've got clearly a pluperfect indicative verb. Perfect because it's the third principal part, sustul, and then erat because that's a kind of past form of the verb sum esse, to be. That's what makes it pluperfect. So to recap everything, for just as with the longest trunk raised up proudly, say into the heavens, with it poured out with its certain branches, at times white, at times black and spotted, just as if it had raised up, had lifted, had elevated earth or ash. So he's actually quite accurate. That's exactly what it's doing. So this praut is really because it is doing that. But that's the sense of the meaning. So you can see, even though Pliny's uncle is the one who's famous for natural history, Pliny himself has, Pliny the Younger, the author of this, has developed different ways of accurately and evocatively describing natural phenomenon. And that's part of the reason why Pliny the Elder was so, if we go back up here, that he's so eager to get a look at the cloud. Of course, any of us would, but this is a prominent scientist of his time, and he really is going to take an especially keen interest in this phenomenon. We'll see how that develops as the story goes on. See you next time.